Hello again, welcome back to Asgard, and welcome back to our Pyrotech tutorial spotlight series. Today we're going to start off by talking about the Bloomery. I do want to go ahead and mention that before we even get started, there is an upgraded version. Depending on your situation, you may be able to go ahead and push for this. If you've been to the Nether and you have yourself 3 Wither Skeleton Skulls and some Nether bricks, you can push on to the Wither Forge. Now the Wither Forge does feature one additional recipe in default Pyrotech. I know in Tales there's quite a bit added, and of course depending on your pack, things may be different. But the only added recipe that the Wither Forge has that the standard Bloomery does not is the ability to create obsidian blooms. These are going to be used to make obsidian shards. If you want to get these, this is going to be the only way in default Pyrotech to get those obsidian shards. Now, if you're looking at the Bloomery recipes or the Wither Forge recipes, they're going to look about the same. You can see they take 24 minutes per ore to process it. Sounds like a lot, right? It's not that bad. You're looking at a pretty long time if you're just looking at the default time. But there's ways to speed things up. So if we set up just a default Bloomery, it's very, very simple to set up. You just set it down. There you go. You get your Bloomery. And to craft this, you are going to have to make one new material, that is refractory blocks. And so to make this, you pretty much have, it's kind of like your culmination of your standard stone machines to make your refractory blocks. You're going to have to get refractory bricks, which need to be made in the kiln or the furnace if you have access to that, but really the kiln is what you're looking at. You're going to need these unfired refractory bricks, which takes lump of refractory clay. You're going to be crafting this refractory clay here, which takes clay. It takes slaked lime, which is just a soaking pot thing with quick lime and water. Quick lime is crushing limestone. You're going to get that crushed limestone, then you can smelt it in your kiln to get that quick lime. You're also going to need ash, which we've talked about. You get it from all over the place, clay. And you're also going to need this flint clay, which is crushed flint with some liquid clay. Crushed flint being flint shards crushed down. Of course, using a hammer in that case on your anvil. So once you have your Bloomery crafted, you place it down. What you're going to do is you're going to take your ore that you want to put in. You're just going to put it there in the top. Okay. Only one ore fits into this at a time. And then if you take your coal, place that in, it's going to place it on top. Now, one thing to note is depending on how much coal you put in, like let's go ahead and set up an example here. You can see right here that the speed with only one coal is going to be 15%. So with that, I mean, you're looking at like an hour to 2 hours, depending on what ore you're smelting, an hour to 2 hours smelting that single piece of ore. But you can use just one piece of coal if you so desire. Now on the other side of the spectrum, if you put in a full 16, you can see that the speed here is now 34%. Okay. So it's a little bit better. If you're using, a full 16, it's going to increase the speed, but it's still going to be a very long process, right? But when you're using a Bloomery, I highly suggest that you get yourself some bellows. At bare minimum, get yourself some manual bellows. And you can see that just a single compression of this speeds it up by a quite a substantial amount. And we can keep compressing this and working these bellows to get the speed up to a decent amount. It's not going to be too crazy, but probably about 300% is going to be about all you can manage, unless maybe you have 2 people working bellows on each side. If you're playing multiplayer, you can put up to 3 bellows on this and it will work just fine. You don't want to put one in front of it because you're going to have this slag that comes out the front, so you will need to leave the front open when setting this up. But you can put up to 3 bellows on here, but just know that you're really only going to be able to work 1 bellows by yourself, right? You can't just keep jumping around because it immediately comes up and it needs constant compression to keep increasing that speed. Like, bellows are useful on these other machines. They're pretty much required when it comes to your Bloomery, unless you want stuff to take a really long time. We're going to talk about mechanical bellows, though. This would be a great time to push for that. But one thing to note is mechanical bellows are going to require a piston, so you are going to need a little bit of iron. So I would suggest that you work iron first, get that, and then move to mechanical bellows as fast as possible. Now, once you're ready to actually start smelting this, though, what you're going to do is you're going to take some kind of fire starting device and just ignite a fire right here on top. So That's going to start running. You're going to see a progress bar start to fill up on the top there once we work this down a little bit. But with 16 fuel, you're going to be able to get close to 300% speed. So if you manage to get it up to about 300% speed, you're still looking at a few minutes to make this. So it might be a little bit cumbersome to work the bellows, but just bear in mind, as soon as you get a single piece of iron, it's not going to be a concern anymore once that's up and going. So that's going to smelt for a while. Now, periodically, as this smelts, it will kick out slag. Kind of like how we have the wood chips that get kicked out. It's going to kick out just a little bit of slag here. And eventually it's going to pile up out the front here. There we go. There's our first bit of slag. But over here we have a finished one. And you can see our slag here. What we can do is... actually, I believe it's a pick, isn't it? Pick for this. What we can do is we can take our pick and we can just start breaking this slag down. And we're going to get iron ore slag. Now over here, if you were to break this hot slag, that's fine. You can break it when it's hot. It's not a big deal. And inside of here, you're going to see up there, underneath where it says Bloomery, you're going to see what's called a bloom. Okay? And a bloom is basically what is created from all the iron as it melts down. It's, you know, it's a combination of metal and impurities that you're going to have to work out to actually make something usable. Now, up top here, you're going to see some ash that's left over from our coal. Once again, you can just right-click this and kind of empty it out, get your ash. You know, maybe use that to make more refractory blocks or something like that. Now, down there, you're going to see the bloomery. Now, what we can do is we can just right-click and pick this up, but you're going to notice I start taking damage. Okay? What you want to do when it comes to a bloom is get yourself a pair of tongs. There's a variety here that you can craft. And what you can do is you can just right-click these and pick up that bloom. Okay? And each tong is going to have durability, which is then decreased whenever you place that bloom down. Okay? And you can move this thing around however you want to, but having a bloom down, it is going to cause fires nearby. So just be aware of that. I wouldn't suggest having a lot of wood near your kind of your smelting area here. So make sure it's free of anything that can catch on fire. And what we're going to do, there's a couple different options that you have here. First up, you are going to want to get yourself a hammer. And, you know, better quality hammers are going to perform a little bit better. Let's go ahead. Well, let's actually grab like a flint hammer. That's all you're going to have access to initially. Now, what you can do is, if we come up to this, you can see up there is a couple percentages here. There's integrity, hammered, and hammer power. Okay, and you're going to see that as I get closer to this, my hammer power is going to increase. So the closer that you are to your bloom, the higher your hammer power, which means that your swings are going to be stronger. Now you'll notice that with a diamond hammer, I have a hammer power of 300% when I'm near it. So depending on the quality of your hammer, you're going to get better performance. But I do suggest that you stand pretty close to your bloom. Now when it comes to actually hammering this, you can hammer it just directly on the ground. So if we right click it, you can see that it's 18%, 37% hammered. Another option is putting it onto a like an anvil, and we can hammer it here like so. And you'll notice that it does reset, so moving it around is going to reset that. I'm actually going to make a couple more of these, just duplicate them through creative mode, just for example's sake. But if you were to hammer this on the ground, it works just fine, like I said, but there is a chance it's going to break the block below it. But you'll notice right there, it broke the block beneath it, but it did drop the bloom back on the ground. You can see the integrity now is down to 92%, but we did get an iron nugget from kind of hammering that down. Now, if you were to do it on an anvil instead, and we come over and we start hammering this, you'll notice that it doesn't break off and all that mess. It stays on the anvil. Now, if you want to use an ironclad anvil, if you have access to that, it's going to have more durability than a granite anvil. So it is worth doing. And it's a little bit dangerous working around this, as you can tell. And another thing to notice is it takes a lot more effort to hammer out a bloom when it's on the ground. And then in addition, it does that. So I do suggest that you have an anvil. It just makes your life a little bit easier, in all honesty. But we're going to hammer this thing out. We're going to get as many iron nuggets as we can. You can see that we got 10 iron nuggets there. We also got some slag byproduct. Now, standard slag, you can use this to make slag heaps. These slag heaps can then be smelted into what's called slag glass, which is a special type of glass. It's not really used for anything within default Pyrotech aside from just building. I know in Tails I've given it some uses, but that's what it looks like. Actually a really nice looking glass, does have connected textures, and I don't know, I really like it because it's almost kind of a bluish type glass, clean looking glass with just that border around it. So just a heads up on that. Now your iron ore slag, what you can do is 8 of these, you can compact it in a compacting bin or mechanical compactor to get iron ore slag heaps, which you can then resmelt to get a new slag bloom. So I got 10 nuggets from a single ore, which is more than 1 ingot, but I also got this slag, almost enough slag left over to smelt again, right? So you kind of, in some cases, you can create this almost loop where you might use 2 ores, but you can then smelt them and make about 5 ingots worth in a lot of cases. So it's kind of like an ore doubling system. It is a lot more work than just dumping something into, say, a machine that just does it for you. It's a lot more work than that. And it would be a lot tougher to, say, automate or something like that. It would take some weird kind of cross-mod type things. Something like an auto user, maybe hammering might work. I don't know. But with the state of modded Minecraft these days, I would say that it's probably possible under some circumstances, but it would be a bit involved. Maybe computer craft or something like that. But it is a bit more work, but you can actually get a lot of output from it. And then once you have your nuggets, you just craft them like standard. You know, there's nothing limiting you as far as crafting ingots within default Pyrotech. Now, a couple things I want to make note of. We're going to open up the book here. You can see that there are fuel modifiers. So if you're using blocks of coal, you're looking at 150% efficiency. If you're using blocks of coal coke or living tar, you're looking at 300% efficiency. And now, if we take a look at living tar, you can get this just with some coal tar and netherrack. Coal tar coming from a block of coal that is done through refractory burning, which we're going to get into in the next episode. We're going to talk a bit about refractory burning and how to actually get that coal tar. It's a little bit later to actually get that, but you can see that it is worth doing once you get up to that point, because you are going to get the coal tar for making living tar. You're also going to get coal coke, which you can then use to make your blocks of coal coke. For example here, and living tar and coal coke are going to be late game Pyrotech, basically. Which of course is still pretty early game Minecraft. But for example, you can see that with 16 coal, it's a 34% speed with no airflow added, with the bellows. But if we take and we put in coal, blocks of coal, you're looking at 134% speed. Of course, at this point, you are using a lot of coal. You're using a whole lot of coal to get up to that 134 speed. Now, another option is using blocks of charcoal. Should be a whole lot easier for you to craft with your wood burning, and you do get up to 110% speed with that. So that's another option if you're just wanting a lot of speed. Might be worth it for your initial iron just to get it over and done with, so you're not having to work your bellows quite as hard. But personally, I would just go with the singles and just give it some time. Maybe work the bellows, something like that. That's me personally, though. Now, if you come over here, if we put in these blocks of coal coke, you can see that just straight up 269% speed with this living tar. Once again, 269% speed. And I will say that once you get into late game Pyrotech, you will be able to craft lots of living tar because you'll be able to turn all of your coal pretty much into coal coke, and you're going to get a lot of that coal tar. So you may have a bit of this once the late game Pyrotech comes up. I will say that in Tails I have added additional burnable materials that have really good efficiency and stuff like that. Things like peat from the Between Lands has been added, as well as a number of other things. Now, another thing I want to talk about really, really quick, the recipes don't show up in JEI, but if we take a look right here, if you get some slaked lime and you make yourself some leather armor, you can actually make fire protection armor. Since you're going to be working around the bellow or the blooms and things, you might get burned. So making this armor, it's fairly cheap to make. That slaked lime, of course, not being very expensive. You can make this fire protection gear, which gives you an extra layer of defense against catching on fire, which will probably inevitably happen when you're working around your forge. You know, you're working with a lot of things that can catch you on fire. So that's something else to consider. But the other thing that I want to talk about is, I think it's in here. Yeah. Okay. So first up, adding efficiency. If you want to add efficiency to your hammer, it'll increase your hammer power. So a diamond hammer enchanted with efficiency, you'll be able to break down a bloom, each hit. So quite useful. Also, potion of strength will increase your hammer power. Weakness and mining fatigue decrease your hammer power. Adding fortune will increase the chance that a bloom will not lose integrity when it's hammered. So that integrity bar, of course, as it wears down, eventually it breaks the bloom, but putting fortune on there, fortune 3 is actually pretty effective. I'm going to show you here in a second how much more nuggets that I can get using a fortune 3 hammer over just a standard hammer. So within Pyrotech, you can kind of use fortune to increase your metal gains, whereas with normal Minecraft, you can't, so that's another really nice level of kind of ore duplication or multiplication. And then adding Silk Touch will dramatically reduce the chance that hammering a bloom will fail and produce slag. So there is a small chance. It's not really a high chance. I personally like the fortune over the Silk Touch in my experience. I find that I get a lot more out of it, but there is a small chance that whenever you hammer down your bloom, you'll get slag. We did get it at one point. That's where we got this slag from, but we still got 10 nuggets off of a single ore. Now, as a quick example, I'm going to show you how fast it is if you upgrade to the Wither Forge and have this same setup. First up, you'll notice that we can now smelt 3 iron ore per operation. So it is going to increase your overall output through being able to smelt 3 at a time. We throw that in there, you can see that our speed is about 8,000 with this. Okay, and this is when it gets really, really fun. Once you go to the Nether and you can make your Wither Forge, super fun. And we're going to go ahead and light this on fire. There we go. You'll hear some kind of cool little sound effects. And you will notice that it is quite a bit faster. I would say it's about the same speed as a standard furnace. And if we grab this out, we set it down, we have an iron ore bloom. But you'll notice that the integrity goes down a lot less, right? So whenever you first get that out, don't worry. Don't be thinking like, oh, I only got 1 and I was supposed to get 3. You're getting the quality of the amount of 3. It's 1 item. So it's a little bit easier to handle. But it does 3 at a time. You'll just notice the integrity goes down a lot slower. So for example here, if we break this all the way down, it's a little bit of effort. This is where efficiency really comes in handy, because right now I'm having to do 2 hits per operation, and efficiency will make that a bit faster. So you can see I got 49 iron nuggets. I got a bit of iron ore slag. I can't remember how much we had initially, and we do have a bit of standard slag. And so that's pretty much all there is to the Bloomery and the Wither Forge. You will notice this one is still going. This is the one, of course, with no speed increases here. It's just a very, very slow process that it's going through. Now, you will notice that whenever I broke that, it does increase the airflow. Keeping this clear of slag, especially when you're in the time period where things are really slow to craft, keeping this slag cleaned up will help you out a bit. It will increase your speed slightly. So I do suggest keeping this front kind of cleared of slag as best you can. It's not a huge deal. It's not going to make a huge difference on your speed because the amount of airflow is minimal that it changes, but it is something worth noting. Next episode, we will cover the mechanical stuff in detail, because there is a bit to it, covering the different stats of different cogs and things like that. So we'll be covering that next episode. So anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the episode, and I hope you found it helpful. If you find yourself messing around with Pyrotech, like I said, I personally love it. I would say it's one of my top 5 picks as far as tech mods go. I know it's low tech, but I absolutely love it. So anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. If you did, as always, be sure and hit that like button, and go ahead and subscribe if you're not already, to stay updated with when new videos come out, and I hope to see you guys next time. So until then, as always, do take care, stay safe. I'll see you guys then.